Welcome to today's CXO Tech Insight. We're so glad that you're here and can come to listen to this topic today. We're very excited about this topic today. We have some great panelists. We always get the advantage of being able to have the prep calls. So we kind of know what's coming when we come into these calls, but not definitely, but we know kind of an idea of it. So I'm always excited to hear how it's going to expand. So my name is Kim Lanfear. For those of you who don't know me, I am the Chief Executive Officer of Apparo. And Apparo is a nonprofit. I prefer to call them a social impact because I don't want to give the impression that we're not a business. We do have to run like a business, and we do have to make a profit because it's that profit that we use to invest in the work that we do, the mission that we do. So we're grateful for you here. Apparo works with other social impact organizations in our community, and we work to lift the community. You're part of working to lift the community by your attendance here. Your purchase of this ticket is indirectly a fundraising piece of what we do so that we can continue to do what we do. I want to talk to you about how you can engage before I turn it over to our wonderful panelists. We are always looking for volunteers who want to give their skills specifically. So this isn't about volunteering to come in and work a soup kitchen line or to build a house for Habitat for Humanity or to pack a bag for weekend backpacks. This is about using your skills that you have every day in the business world, in technology and in business processes, because as you know, you can't enable with technology if you don't have tight business processes. So if you are interested in volunteering with us, helping us to engage with these nonprofits, we work with over almost 600 nonprofits in the greater Charlotte area. And we've worked with over 200 this year alone because it's been such an intense year with COVID and the needs to understand how to work remotely. So we are looking for people who are interested in looking at how to do tech assessments, tech planning, how to do application selections, how to define best use cases, how to help a nonprofit understand, here's what I need to be doing with an application so that I can then go forward and select an application. We need folks with Microsoft Office skills, and they don't have to be high level. They can be really technological, like implementation, how to set up a Microsoft Office system on a PC. And they can also be more generic about how to be more efficient with a particular cloud, how to be more efficient with calendaring or better use an Excel spreadsheet. So they can be all over the place, and you do not have to be a master in these skills. You just have to be willing to work at with a nonprofit at their level. A couple of hours a week usually is the kind of volunteer engagement we have. And if you are interested in that, I hope you will reach out to us, to any of us off of our website or info@apparo.org. And with that, with my plea for volunteers, I'm gonna turn this over to Jake and have him tell you a little bit about the exciting conversation we're gonna have and introduce you to our great panelists. Jake?
Thank you, Kim, and thanks to everybody for spending the time with us this evening. My name is Jake Brody. I'm a managing director at Accenture Interactive, an experienced strategist, and I lead a lot of our business in what we call the South Market Unit, which is essentially, all industries and companies from Maryland to Florida and over to Texas. I'm really excited to be here to talk to each of you and to also spend some time with some great leaders in the North Carolina, Charlotte area who will introduce themselves as we get into the Q&A. And I hope you're intrigued by the topic that we put forward today. That really is, how do companies like ours in the world that exists today really transform ourselves from what traditionally is called customer experience to what we believe is what's called the business of experience. And what do I mean by that? I mean, it's fascinating. I was doing a presentation this morning on South by Southwest online. And I remember a year ago being in Austin, getting ready to go to South by Southwest and then sort of flying home on March 12th. And we all know what the past year has become. But we couldn't have imagined the change that has happened in our society, in our business world, and in our communities. But what has that done for us all as we think about where we are today, where we're going, and essentially the pivot that we're all in around, through the pandemic recovery, and as businesses, as we're focusing on getting back to growth. And what we're finding through research that we've done with about 80% of CEOs, that they all feel deeply about the need to reimagine how they engage with their customers, how they treat their customers. And the question that we often hear from them is, how do you do this, right? How do you pivot back to profitable growth? And how do you take advantage of this massive opportunity to really reimagine the way we fulfill our customers' expectations, our community's expectations, and our own employee and organizational expectations? And so we had done a lot of work over the past year, and every year we release what we call our Fjord trends. These are sort of annual trends that help us, that we sort of crowdsource across the globe around reimaginations and design practices based on things that we're seeing in the marketplace, from culture to business to community, what have you. And there's a number of those that talk about the sense of collective displacement, and how do we help people find their place again with the right experiences. There's this whole sense of do-it-yourself innovation, and how do we help people get creative in the way we live and the way we operate. And then there's one that we sort of jokingly call around, like, sweet teams are made of this, right? And how do you help reshape your employees' experiences for a post-pandemic world? The one that really strikes me is this thing we call interaction wanderlust. That the way that organizations like yours, like ours, and like our panelists, how we're thinking about we bring joy to the world, that's sort of through this screen engagement that we've all been isolated in, of course, the past year, is a different way of thinking, a different way of engaging with our audiences. And so when we think through this experience renaissance, as we call it, right, what we're finding is that companies who holistically and wholeheartedly embrace this business of experience mentality are really transforming the way they engage with their customers. And that's a marked difference from what we all may have thought about customer experience in the past, in terms of getting data on people, building out classic CRM platforms and just having that one-to-one connection. So what I'm really excited about, the panelists we have from 3 great organizations in the Charlotte area, it's each of those touches all of us in different ways, right? The way we may get health, preventative health care, the way we get our energy and our electricity, frankly, on recent weather events. And frankly, the way we sort of think about our future and provide financial health for our family and our communities. Like, all those things require a different way of thinking about experiences. I'll give you an example before we get into the panel discussion. If you think about Farmers Insurance, right? We all know Farmers Insurance. You've seen the commercials on TV. They totally reimagined the renter's experience. They thought to themselves, how do we take advantage of the expectations that today's consumers, customers, the millennial mindset has around something that's sort of old and static as insurance, and created a whole different renters insurance platform that we call Toggle from scratch, which is really about hyper-focusing on the expectations of that customer segment, to think through their real needs around what insurance means around safety and protection, and understanding their attitudes and feelings, and saying, hey, how do we go beyond what a traditional insurance company may have done and may have provided, and create a differentiated experience for that audience, right? They put themselves in the mindset of saying, hey, if we can operate as a business of experience, then we can find net new ways to engage with our customers and drive greater value in the marketplace. So it's with that sort of perspective that we're going to have a bit of a dialogue today, and you're going to hear from our panelists on a couple of topics around this concept around business of experience that I think are directly relevant, not only to their organizations, but by larger the organizations as well. So why don't we jump right into it? I want to be a little bit of a facilitator and back and forth, and make a call on each of the panelists to offer some of their perspectives as well. So
and Jake, before you start, I didn't
go ahead,
tell
Kim.
people,
Sorry about that.
please do put questions in the chat. We'll be watching the chat, and I didn't mention that earlier, so we will be doing that. Thank you.
No worries at all. Thank you. That's been good, because we want this to be one at the end of the day. I appreciate you all being here. So let's just have some lively back and forth and explore with each other as well. So we'll go around the horn for each of the panelists, start with Jean, and then John, and then Satish. I'm going to give you this question. Use it to introduce yourself, your title, your company, as you answer the question. So here we go. So today, right, 8 in 10 consumers say purpose is at least as important to them as customer experience. So the question really is, what role does your team play in demonstrating your organization's purpose, and how does it factor into the company's culture and decision-making? So Jean? Oh, you're on mute, bud.
That's the quote of the year.
I know.
Hey everyone, Gene Parker, Vice President, Application Development with Novant Health. I've only been with Novant for 4 months, but have been in healthcare for the past 4 years. I was with Premier Health through the beginning of the COVID crisis. Experience before then is in retail IT from eBay and IBM. So a lot of my experience comes from that retail sector that has been customer focused. And I think has been leading that edge on online experiences, how they translate in stores. A lot of experience with RalphLauren.com, and just imagine convincing someone to buy $100 T-shirt is about the experience as much as it is about that price point and the way they feel when they're doing something. So very important conversation. In healthcare, it's a known fact that accessibility to affordable care has been an issue. And really the COVID crisis saw that come to light in a very meaningful way. Our team, it's part of our corporate mission down from Carl, our CEO, to really focus on accessibility of care. And, a lot of our portfolio and products are really lined up around, how do we get that sort of experience and care to folks who are in these underserved communities. Many in these underserved communities, whether they be rural or urban, don't have computers at home. And we've seen that play out with homeschooling. We've seen it play out in a lot of different areas. So, my team's focused on really becoming dynamic from a mobile perspective, and really providing that access to kind of key services is really for top down part of how we evaluate what we do and how we execute. So it's very intentional on our part.
I appreciate that, Gene. John, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, good evening. I'm John Mitchell from Duke Energy. I'm Managing Director of digital transformation, cloud transformation and architecture. It's new, so I'm just practicing it for the first time, actually. But actually, I've been on this journey for quite a while with Duke, as we've been in a process of digital transformation really for the past 5 years. And purpose, I love the question because purpose is so important. And we've always had some purpose. I think all transformations over the past 5 years have been about connected customer experiences and digital workers and empowered employees. But we've really actually focused recently at Duke with a even more precise purpose, and that's our clean energy transformation, which is a statement that's our purpose is net zero carbon by 2050. And as you can imagine, that actually is an exciting purpose to rally around, because if you think about it, what for any company that's a big goal, but for an energy company, that's huge. And so for us to reach that goal, it involves a lot of rethinking a lot of things around customer experience. Even starting with stakeholders and how we engage with our stakeholders, and really with communities in mind, transition to those new energy sources. And then at the same time, maintaining affordability for our customers. So just like Gene said, that's so important. And that's what we we saw firsthand during the COVID impact of our customers really struggling. That's where we really had an opportunity, and we took advantage of it to really practice what we preach in terms of transformation being designed to address customer needs, not 6 months or a year from now, but now, today, right? And so we built 3 apps in 3 months to help do that. So having that purpose and then connecting all of our focus around technology and customer experience, really fits well together. So I'm excited for us that we have this new purpose that we can rally around.
No, I love that, John. And what excites me about the way you talked about purpose there is, as we thought about, again, this business of experience, one of the first things that you challenge our business leaders and customers is think through, right, how do you really try to understand human needs, right, at the base level? And you do that through contextual research, you do that through integrating all your data, you do that through seeing your customers as collaborators. So I loved how You sort of talked about the way you guys think about purpose at that level. There's a lot of insights you've got to drive from there. Satish, why don't you introduce yourself and we can keep moving here in the conversation.
No problem. Thank you, Jake, for facilitating the panel. And Kim, thank you for having me. My name is Satish Muthukrishnan. I run technology at Ally. Ally's goal is to be our customers' best financial ally. And we focus on our customers, shareholders, and the communities that we live in. If you think about our customers, and the question was insightful for me because you said, what is your team doing to make sure that you achieve the purpose that your company is setting forth? When the pandemic started, I'll just give you an example. We wanted to make sure that we help our customers by keeping them in their cars, because we knew that they were going to go through hard times. How do you keep them in their cars? We said we'll give them loan deferrals. How do you keep your customers in their homes? By giving them loan deferrals. At the same time, the technology team was migrating the entire population from work to their homes. And our customer care associates have never worked from home. We didn't have the facility to do it. So if you tell your customers, call us and we'll give you a loan deferral, they're going to call you, but there's nobody to answer on the other side. So the technology team took it upon themselves to ensure that not only are we moving our colleagues home safely, but we'll make them very productive from day one. And all of this happened over a week. And I can't thank enough for the team members. And you have RV here, he's also part of the team that enabled that. And what we also did, the team also did is, why do we have to have customers call us? We are a digital organization. Let's do everything digitally. So we were the first financial institution to roll out the loan deferrals for auto and home. Not only were we first, the customers were able to do it 100% online. There were other competitors out there that rolled it out, but asked the customers to call in, and they were holding online for hours together. So that's a way of serving our customers. I'll tell you another example of how we are serving the communities. When the whole COVID thing happened, and Jean touched on it, people were working remotely or going to school remotely, all of a sudden you see these underprivileged kids or people that didn't have enough to buy a computer to attend school remotely. And as a financial services organization, we generally do not recycle our computers. You take it and then you destroy it. So what the team did was took the computer, introduced degauging, used technology to completely clean it, and then we gave it back to the communities to give it to people who were in need. The team didn't stop there. They extended it to say, how can we bridge the digital divide? And now we have introduced a curriculum where over a period of time, the folks that are getting the computer will go through a course with us, where some of the classes are taught by my own team. And at the end of the class, when they successfully graduate, they get to keep the computer to look for a job. Or if there is a mutual fit, then they come and work for Ally in the technology organization. So there is a number of things that we are doing, but all of this drives purpose through what the company does and the tone that is set by the board and the CEO.
That's perfect, Satish. And what I think was really interesting and insightful for our audience there is, it sounds like you all basically infused experience into every aspect of your organization. You thought about it not just being a financial organization, but saying, hey, how does that experience manifest itself in our communities? How can we be proactive in our customer engagement? So it wasn't just a simple lens of customer experience. It was, we can do these things across all aspects of our business. So you're on that transformational journey to becoming a business of experience. And there's a question in there from Amir around, how do you think through exceptional employee experience? Does that equate to being an exceptional customer experience? I think you kind of hit on some of that, but the things that I think for all of us to sort of further explore as we dialogue around that relationship on thinking about human needs, right? Amir, it's like as a business of experience, if you're really thinking about the human needs of your customers and your employees, that's going to really manifest itself in the way in which you engage in the marketplace, the types of products you may want to create and deliver, and then the feedback loop, right? The metrics you're trying to drive from to understand, are you delivering value where you want it to, tied to your purpose, tied to the outcomes of your organization, right? So I definitely, think, and there's a conversation that we had this morning on South by Southwest Online with the chief customer officer of Best Buy, a great story around how they've really adopted being in business experience. It really starts from their associates, right? Their blue shirts in the stores, and how they pivoted during the pandemic time to really be so, focused on safety, customer care, product speed to value, right? All the ways in which you would think organizations would have changed, they took it to heart and accelerated it. So we can get that information to you all later. She's done a great job of talking about the work that they do in the marketplace. That's we all know Best Buy, great organization. We hit a couple of questions here. Gene, one more. I think we think about the pandemic. The impact has really forced all of us to reimagine experience, but currently, our ways of working, communicating, living have just become the new standard, right? Here we are talking through the screen. What are some of the shifts that you've made to meet new customer expectations, and which do you think are here to stay?
Yeah, when I think of Satish and maybe John's business, you may have more real-time interactions with your customers. I know in healthcare, and this is splitting at the time with Premier Health, we had commerce tools that were a lot of times based on batch delivery of data. So within 30 days, we went from kind of batch processing to near real-time to real-time access to information, because we were pumping out PPE products. And we needed to know how much inventory we had. We needed to know exactly where it could go. We couldn't be wrong. And we had to accelerate that maturation, at least on our side at Premier, in a meaningful way. And is it here to stay? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, once you get a taste, once our B2B customers got a taste of having that real-time access and that sort of engagement, it became the norm at that time. And that's just one example of what I think is here to stay. At Novant, I call it educating while we execute. Many of our patients who are looking to get right now vaccinations, for instance, we are creating experiences that both allow them to schedule, but also educate them along the way, because they're at home, they are disconnected. Sometimes you're having folks who are, the vast majority of the time, not tech savvy, trying to engage and are desperate to kind of engage in this healthcare process. So we are educating while we're helping them to execute. And it's really allowed us to think about the apps that we're building and what we're putting in our patients' hands in a different way. Being more careful with the words. Imagine a line of right now of 300, 400 people waiting to get a vaccine, on their lunch break or what have you, and the experience as they're walking into one of our facilities. So we actually have cross-functional teams now that look at getting out of the car, walking to get in line. What do you do? Answering the questions. If you've had your shot, do you have allergic reactions to stuff? Have you had COVID in the last 14 days? Those sorts of things. Now we're able to do all those things mobilely. So you just show a green check, to a vaccinator. So we've really had to reimagine those things. I think once you kind of create those experiences, I do believe they become sticky for our consumers, that they will expect that more even as the pandemic, goes away.
No, I agree with you, Gene. And be curious, John, from your standpoint. I mean, I know it's funny enough, today I had the guys from the power company out here installing a generator for me, even though I'm just outside of Washington, D.C., but I've got colleagues who had that terrible Texas weather event and got me thinking probably it's about time to at least have a backup. But usually when you talk to the power company, it's the energy company, it's after something has happened. So I'm always curious, what ways in which you all are thinking about experience and the way you communicate with your customers that either have changed because of the pandemic or you find have opened up new avenues for you to engage with your customers.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know if it's changed, like our desires have changed as much as just our confidence that we can do some things. I mean, I'm puzzled a little bit, right? That it took a pandemic for us to get good online food ordering, right? There hasn't been a tech breakthrough there that's made that possible this past year. It's been there, all along, and for some reason we just didn't do it until we had the really hard need to. And so, I hope we never go back from that, right? Hopefully that's here to stay. I love ordering food online today. I need to do that right now, matter of fact. For us, I won't throw that industry under the bus without looking at myself, right? So we had to step up big time with our customers who were going to struggle to pay their bills as they lost jobs and such. And so it wasn't that we just suddenly woke up and said, let's deliver a great customer experience. We've always wanted to do this, but I think we thought, well, we need to change out our billing system, or we need to, there's going to be this huge project to make this better. And we were taking those on, but then when COVID hit, we had this realization that our customers were going to struggle. We were going to be able to offer them these deferred payment arrangements, but they were going to be contacting us at volumes that we've unprecedented. And it would be in crisis mode, right? You're not setting up a deferred payment because you think you might lose your job. You lost your job, right, at that point. And you need not only to know that you've got that set up, you need to know right away that your power is not going to be turned off. Now we stopped doing disconnects, but at some point the states required us to start turning disconnects back on. So the effort we put out in 3 months to build 3 apps was to really hit it from both, one, give customers a self-service option, an intelligent one too, right? So we would only recommend the right deferred payment arrangement that they were eligible for. So we did some intelligence in the background to surface that and hopefully help them, let them self-serve. Another one though, is we knew a lot of people would still want to call and talk to somebody. And again, unprecedented levels at our call center. So what do? We enforced our corporate responders. Now we do this during big storms and outages, but in this case, this is helping customers with billing. Are we going to give our volunteers, corporate volunteers like myself, access to the billing system? No, we couldn't do that, nor could we train people quickly. So we built a tool that walked them through the process completely from start to finish. And still gave them the opportunity to listen with empathy to the customer's challenges, and they shared a lot of challenges. And there was a lot of tears from those volunteers. I can tell you that much. But we were able to, with those tools, actually help about 500,000 customers get deferred payment arrangements in place. Again, very tailored. So there's an example of tailoring something for customer experience, but then we tailored something for employees to be able to help as well. And then a third thing we put in place that Kim will appreciate is we've always had nonprofits out there, agencies that will assist people who can't pay their bill. But it's can be a hassle to connect them based on their eligibility and where they live and all kinds of details. And normally it was just, okay, here's the list of phone numbers. Well, we built an app that would, again, very much look at the person's, pull up their account information, and then send them to the agency, send the information over to the agency, and really do as much as we can to hand off a smooth handoff for those customers. And so I'm really proud of what we're able to do. But the big part here is not that we woke up and decided to be nice to our customers. It's that we had the confidence we could do something in that short a period of time. 3 months, that's fast to build apps. So we've created a new standard for how potentially we can react to situations in the past. Maybe we don't have to do everything on a project by project basis.
Right. And that's an interesting sort of mindset shift, right? You flipped the switch to how do we solve for the customer rather than how do we solve for our historical processes. Every project takes 6 months. We got to go get an annual budget request and all that stuff sort of drags out. There are immediate needs you had to solve for. So that's a great example of, again, pivoting the organization to think about the experience first, customer, employee, community, rather than sort of the organization first kind of thing. I'm going to switch gears here for a second. So Satish, one of the major challenges we're seeing, with the old way of viewing customer experience is the pace of customer demands. you probably know it as well. Many organizations are either out of sync, they're too rigid, and they found themselves moving at a pace that is slower than the pace of change in consumer demand, what we all come to expect, largely probably in our own world with which we engage with organizations. How are you and Ally keeping up with the pace of new customer demands and expectations?
It's a great challenge, isn't it? That keeps us going. The way we think about an Ally is we need to take care of our colleagues, and frankly, our colleagues are our internal customers that take care of our customers, external customers. So I'll give you an example of how fast we moved when COVID hit. In the initial weeks, the first or two, I think probably the third week, we decided that we will give a $1,200 check to anybody that made less than $100,000. This is not because we were laying off anyone. This is because we thought that naturally they may be facing hardships, bringing people home, keeping kids home, bringing your elders home. Maybe your spouse lost a job. That level of mentality and how fast you can move that in a corporate world was fascinating to see. 3 months down the line, when it was June, we decided that we'll give them 50% of their bonus from 2021 ahead of time. And now you are facing a challenge that says everybody's going to get 100% bonus. In reality, that doesn't happen. It's based on your performance. But the company didn't think of it that way. The company said, these are tough times. We need to take care of our internal customers. Let's do it. So the mentality, it starts with how you set the tone internally within the company so you can take care of customer demands. And I'll tell you from a technology standpoint, what we did, we rolled out our first artificial intelligence bot. And we were bold enough, we didn't call it it didn't have any names. We just called it the bot. That in itself was a revelation for our customers because we're just calling it bot. We're not calling it any names. And we said, the bot will only answer the questions that it knows and it has been taught to answer. If it doesn't, then you will be immediately and gracefully transferred to a live agent. And we automated 6% of the intents of the number of calls that we get. And our containment rate, meaning the questions that the customers ask that can be answered by the bot and the customer disconnects, is at 62% today, leading in the industry. So I'm thrilled with what the team did there. It was not solving for everything that the customer wants. It is solving for what the customer really, really wants. So we can unleash the productivity and bandwidth for our internal customers so they can solve the more complex problems. And the last example I would give you is, many of us got Robin Hooded, right? Like you remember the GameStop days and you were not able to trade, all the trading houses came down. You have angry customers in our investment business. They're not able to trade. And now the immediate thing that they would do is call the customer care reps. And you have thousands of folks calling in. How do you now differentiate between who is calling because they're not able to place a trade versus who's calling to find out what the balance is or if the check hasn't gone? So the team added business rules within hours to make sure that they're able to match these customers, and we call them angry customers, right, or unhappy customers, directly put them to a live customer agent as soon as they call in without waiting. So that immediately calms them down. There is somebody to help, even though digitally they were not able to perform the action. We may not be able to satisfy what they wanted to do, but we were able to provide an explanation. So it's not always identifying and giving what the customer wants, but it's being there when they need us the most. And then from a technology standpoint, how do you see around the corners and bring the right technology to show the art of the possible to the business? So that I feel like is our responsibility and accountability.
I like that. And I like the way you thought about, again, back to sort of segmenting your customers and thinking about which ones have what needs and how do you respond to those? And how do you do that at a level of speed through automation? Gene, I'm also curious from your standpoint and Novan, everybody here has some level of security expectation in the industry we're in, financial services, energy, healthcare. Healthcare often has a sort of an added nuance of security and privacy, right? So I'm curious how from your standpoint, the expectations your customers may have, especially now that folks are trying to get vaccinated, people are taking pictures of their vaccine cards and sharing information, right? How do you also try to handle impacting those interactions while also maintaining right levels of security and try to be a more proactive sort of healthcare provider?
Yeah, so I'm far from the security expert, but from our workforce, if you think of the Novant workforce, 35, 40,000 employees distributed across these healthcare facilities, not able to work from home, we had to build in some technology to help them, with pre-shift screening and other apps that really kind of saw them feel more secure going into work and had those kind of that firewall in place for them. A lot of physical security inside the buildings. From a technology standpoint, you're right. PHI, coming from retail, I thought I had a lot of security with PCI concerns and SOX, but then you layer on PHI on top of that, and it gets really crazy. So I think there's always been that underlying theme in everything that we do. And, for the most part, I think customers expect that experience to be seamless and to be, transparent to them. So all of our secure coding practices, everything that we do, all of that held up really well. I think an example of where we were challenged is in sometimes our caregiver experience. If you think of COVID and you think of not having access to the facility, not having access to be at your loved one's bedside, I personally went through this as my father passed COVID related, and we couldn't get to him. So what are the caregiver experiences that we can build in? And it kind of challenged right now. We're working on solving some of those problems, but it added another layer of security concern over the data when it's not the primary or maybe the secondary caregiver, maybe engaging in some of these digital experiences. So, that's just one example of the challenges that we see go forward as, we're trying to get folks vaccinated. There'll be another round of vaccinations next winter as this thing mutates. You'll probably need a booster, and we're going to keep going through this for a time. And I think it's going to continue to challenge our security footprint as we try to create experiences that really meet the needs of the customer in this kind of new world, while always, keeping that PHI secure.
I appreciate that. I think, what you hit on, which gets into the next question is, these new behaviors that are going to be created, right? That we're all coming out of this. And I think you're right. We're all going to fully expect, getting our vaccines, whether it's the 2-shot or the 1-shot, it'll become like the flu season. Go get your COVID update every year, tetanus booster, what have you. Those create, human behaviors, right? And John's example about ordering food online, similar ways, we're all creating different expectations. And it's really those companies, organizations that embrace that change are going to be the ones who are leading the ability to deliver those services. So here's a question, John, for you. As we think about these human behaviors, right, that have really driven lasting, permanent change in your business, how do you respond to the real-time needs of the business and your customers while still keeping an eye on continuous innovation and future growth?
Yeah, great question. I think I'll stick on the food theme, right? If you're not doing the track your pizza for every service that you're providing, right, you're probably not going to meet customer expectations. So, Jake, I don't know if your utility there charted that progress to bring your generator out, but I mean that's the expectation, right? And that's the kind of thing that we're thinking through. For obviously things like starting service with your utility. And there's a lot that happens behind the scenes, that customers don't understand, that can create delays and things like that. But that's not that's not their problem, right? We've got to keep them informed about what's going on every step of the way. And so I think that's important. Communications are so important, and that's not a huge cost, right? So that's something that is very accessible today, mobile communications in particular. So giving people that peace of mind, after they paid their bill, that we've got it, it's paid, don't worry about it, That's so important. But then there's a lot of other things that we're extending those ideas into, like if we're going to be cutting trees in your area, let's communicate that, and let's keep you informed, and not just an email, 3 weeks ahead of time. Let's give you a text message and say, hey, we're cutting trees in your area, because we know our customers are concerned about these things because they'll call the call center. So it's all that data and being able to make those decisions on when to communicate and when not to. It's really important. But I'll share a story that's really where an innovation effort kind of set us up right in terms of real-time information. And we had so we have gas and electric, and there was a third party that damaged one of our gas distribution lines that fed a small town in North Carolina called Farmville, North Carolina. And it affected about 1,700 customers. This was back in January, a very, very cold day. So the customers lose their gas, they lose their heat. And in the past, we had just rolled out a new tool for our workers, and it was more of a tool and some automation, machine learning automation. In the past, it would have taken manual schedulers many hours. I think the estimate was 6 to 8 hours to create work orders for each of those homes, because we have to go out to the homes, relight the pilot lights, make sure everything's safe. Through this tool, we were able to do that in 3 minutes, basically automating the creation of work orders. And because you didn't have to wait for the work orders to get created, the crews could get out there, and we just sent all of our crews, as many as we could, and did as much of that in parallel. And so as a result, we greatly minimized the impact for those customers, and we're able to communicate that with them in real time. So it was just a powerful example of some work that we put in place because we saw this manual process, with these schedulers. I admit that was our driver, but then we got to see the customer impact of that, and we're like, wow, that's what we did. We greatly improved the customer experience, while at the same time, our innovation, it's actually going to save us some time and allow, and so free up some time. So it's a double. Yeah, it's amazing, right? That you could do something extra for customers and at the same time, improve your operations. That's the magic of this stuff. If we can figure out how to bottle that up and continue that on.
I like that story a lot, and I'm curious, Satish, for you. I think historically folks would have their relationship with their financial institution. Sometimes it's a one-to-one transaction-based thing, but I think with people's expectations on want to either be more proactive, want to learn more. I mean, what's your sense of the transformation as not just a bank or a financial institution, but really how do you help folks with their financial wellness and that journey of their expectations and getting more from their partner?
Yeah, I mean, this is a great example by John. He talked about several things that you would want to do as an organization. So maybe I'll add to it. Although I'd like to believe that everything can be solved through technology, just like a technologist. There are instances where a company has to take a step back and see how else can you solve for your customer problems. And one of the things that I was fascinated with what Ally did was hire this role of what we call a chief investment strategist. This is analogous to, you may have watched in movies where you have a character ask the question that the audience would be asking in their own minds. And then the main character answers those questions. It's very similar to that. Lindsay Bell, a chief investment strategist, talks on behalf of our customer in terms of where you should invest, what financial tools you should use. And she's constantly on CNBC, she's on LinkedIn, she's sending out emails, she's hosting seminars. All of that it creates stickiness with our customers. Then you're asking the tough questions and you're providing the right answer to our customers. And I believe that is working. In our banking business, our customer retention rate is 95%. So if Ally set out to be the bank that nobody else is, and there is complete transparency, there is no fees involved, we'll tell you exactly what we're going to do. You don't have to read through the fine print. And adding a chief investment strategy is adding to what we already did things right. And that leads to customer stickiness, and that leads to doing things that what customers want and forces you to think outside the box. How do you do that but keep innovation at heart? RV is here. Part of his responsibility is to run our labs. He's experimenting with newer technology. For example, he's thinking about a low code, no code platform and wanting to create programmers out of our business folks. So technology is not solving the lower level problems. We can solve the more complex problems. He's thinking about what other technology or out of the possible can I bring to the business and showcase to them. So we can collectively look at the next big rock to solve for. So that's kind of how being intentional around, some of the experiments that RV and team do may not make it to the day of the light, but that's okay. How are you intentional around what you do around innovation and experimentation? How do you serve your customer needs? But more importantly, what connects those two is, are you getting feedback from your customers? Are you listening to their comments? Are you listening to what they're talking about in your customer experience? Are you measuring it? And then taking that and feeding it back into how we think from doing our day-to-day business is what helps us.
Yeah, I love that word intentionality. It's one of my top words I use in a lot of different circumstances. What I liked about the way your example of the Satish as well is it's directly in line with one of the core sort of business of experience actions, right? And it's how are you syncing the tech, data, and human needs together, and through those insights, you're able to deliver the right level of experiences. So I appreciate what you're doing, and obviously what Arby's is doing on that front. We're coming close to time, but I want to give each of you a chance to give some advice to everybody on the call on this question. So we'll start with you, Satish, and then John, and close with Gene. What advice do you have for other business leaders who are just beginning their business of experience journey and may not be sure where to start?
It's a great question, Jake. It's a cliche. I hate to use this, but I would say don't boil the ocean. That's one. But at the same time, don't fall into the trap of crawl, walk, run. When people are not boiling the ocean, they just generally fall to the other side. They'd say, we'll crawl, walk, and run. And crawl is so risk-free, and it's so small, and it may not impact a meaningful customer segment, that it may not prove out what you're trying to achieve. My goal is always, and we follow this. We say concept, design, and scale. And the concept has to be a working prototype that you can actually put in front of your customers and get feedback to see how it's working. And it is meaningfully solving either a business problem or a portion of the business problem. When you're solving a portion of the business problem and then you're putting in front of customers to gain experience from what you have launched, then it helps you to then scale it to the level that you want. So you go from MVP to generally available like startups do. So stay away from boiling the ocean and don't fall into the trap of crawl, walk, run. Do something that's meaningful where you can get immediate feedback and then you can scale it.
Perfect. John?
Yeah, no, that's great. I agree with that 100%. I guess the only thing I would add is, so design is so important, right? And that was part of it, of that Satish mentioned. And I think we've gotten comfortable now that, so I made a rule five years ago when we started building software again, that you couldn't build an app unless you had a UX designer on your team. So that just was going to be the rule. It was, I think we're used to that now. We're in that world, hopefully. Because the UX designer does things like thinks about the user and how to make things easier to use. But what we quickly discovered was there's more to it than just the UI. There's actually, what is the problem you're trying to solve? And that's where we call it design thinking. And I know that term gets tossed around a lot. But for me, design thinking is simply saying, let's take a pause before we do anything. Because yeah, we don't want to boil the ocean, but at the same time, we don't want to miss the opportunity to unpack the problem and really step back from it and say, okay, end to end, who's the customer here? And what does that journey look like? And then now, who all else is involved in that journey? Is there an employee? Is there a, another customer? Is there a partner? And if you can, as a company, create some just tools for that, whether it be a series of tools like empathy mapping, but mapping is important, right? Because we're all good, especially architects like myself, we're all good at seeing a current state, drawing a future state, but all that stuff in between, we just kind of gloss over sometimes. And to me, design thinking is the tools to say we're not going to be able to gloss over that. We're going to step back from it. We're going to see what the real problems are. We're going to have to prioritize, but hopefully we can come up with a roadmap that will get us to that. What we often find is even a better state than we could have drawn, because we've taken the time to truly understand the problem. What are all the different organizational impacts? What are all the different teams? Who are all the people we need to bring together to actually solve it? So it's a cultural shift to do that, but I highly recommend it.
No, I love that. It's a cultural shift, and some of what you're saying, John, a little bit of what Satish said as well, right? It's a mindset for all of us to not rush, right? You gotta put the effort in to solve that middle part. There's a little bit of research that has to go into it. We got to be patient and putting the human at the center to figure out what are those interplays before we rush down to some kind of solution, right? So that's really at the heart and the core of thinking about, and driving experiences and being an experience-led organization. So, hey, Gene, what's your advice for the crew?
Yeah, I think the guys hit it on nail on the head there. Certainly, by not boiling the ocean, it kind of rings to me as can you simplify your approach? I've seen sometimes people do like persona mapping that is so in the weeds that my broad team can't really grasp the concept. It may be great for marketers and it may be great for people who are really into design, but I do think at the highest of high levels, you need to have user groups and be able to tell the story. I love the idea of that design thinking. If you haven't invested in at least a little bit of training to kind of understand what that might be, I think it's valuable. One of the things that we do is we try to, over the past year and a half, is storytell. If you haven't taken a storytelling class, it's very interesting because most of our designs can somehow, be on a static piece of paper, flow chart, or in some presentation, this is what we're going to do, but actually act out your customer behaviors. We actually have some things on Zoom now where we actually, leave the room, knock on the door, on the front door of the hospital, you're here to get your vaccine. What steps are we going to take? And how is our technology interfacing? And try to tell the story. How are you feeling? Is the customer anxious? Is the customer, nervous? Do they know where to go? And we began to tell stories, become storytellers, and then wrap that around our product roadmaps. And that's really been helpful. We kind of brought that from the retail sector as you try to convince people to buy a $100 t-shirt, that storytelling of why they would buy that, is useful when you're trying to solve problems in different spaces.
No, I appreciate that. That's good advice from all three of you. We have a few minutes left, so if folks want to put some questions into the chat, I'm happy to share that with our distinguished panelists. But I think you've heard some great perspective on everything we talk about that is experience, and so I think it's interesting to me, and I'm happy to see and hear from each of you how you're on that, what I'd say, that transformational journey to really being a business of experience and putting experience at the heart of how your organization is focused and what you're delivering, in the marketplace, right, into your customers. So, thanks for your time today, everybody. I appreciate it. Satish, John, and Gene, thanks for being on this panel with me. Kim and the Apparo crew, thanks for letting us host this conversation. And let's all go out there and be great experience-led businesses and do our part for our communities and our organization. So thanks again, everybody.
So I'm going to turn it back over to me. Don't say thanks and goodbye, because you have some breakout sessions to continue this conversation. So I, first of all, my mind is blown. I'm listening to this conversation and I'm so amazed at the thought leadership. And I'm sure there are others in this room too, thinking about how these organizations, what they've shared, they've opened that curtain behind the curtain and shown us how they have taken, this incredibly crisis-filled moment and lifted people in it. I mean, wow, both their employees and our community. While we're not looking and just struggling through our day, they've taken technology and just done some amazing pivots. I'm blown away. I loved this conversation. So thank you so much, Jean, Satish, John, and Jake, Accenture and AWS for bringing this to us. This has just been an amazing conversation. I appreciate you all. We are going to take you into breakouts now so that you can all meet with different people and continue this conversation. I do want to remind you and share with you that you are here because you're lifting Apparo's mission, and we are grateful for you. And with that, I am going to turn us over to Karis, who's going to start the breakout rooms. And wait, before you start the breakout rooms, if that's possible, Karis, I want to turn this to Brian Bach from Amazon Web Services to just say a few words before we go into this breakout services. Amazon Web Services is our series sponsor.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. I really appreciate it. We're always appreciative of what you guys do, of the panelists for taking the time to impart wisdom. What you guys had to share was incredible. So thank you guys for taking the time out of your day to be here to discuss. It's meaningful, and we're happy to be a part of Apparo. So thanks to everybody for being here and just being a part of the mission.
Thank you, Brian.
And now, Karis, if you'll open up those breakout rooms, we'll have some conversations happening with other folks. And we're so grateful for you all being here. Please always share the invite broadly because we want more people to hear this incredible thought leadership. One of the things that kills me the most is that only 4 people, only 30, 60 people get to hear it. Kills me.